podcasting since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts Radio Network, kingofpodcasts.com.
To quote a song title from the British punk group of the 70s, The Stranglers, music and radio, something's got to change.
The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast. Here is the King of Podcasts.
And welcome to episode 408 of the Broadcasters Podcast. This is King of Podcasts here with you. Unlike other Thursday nights that I record, I'm actually pretty wide awake. I'm still up and at it. And it's always because I'm very excited about Friday mornings when Spotify and all the other major music platforms are preparing to go and put out New Music Friday. And I get all these new songs I get to go and sample and try out. And I look forward to it. It's a fun thing, a fun way to start the weekend. And then my weekend begins with, after I have breakfast in the morning on Friday morning, then I go ahead and clean my bathroom because it's just what I do. And I put on the BBC Radio official chart with Jack Saunders. And I put that on and usually catch the back end of the top 20. And for the last few weeks, it was either, what was it? The K-pop Doom Hunters and Golden Note was number one. Olivia Dean with Man I Need finally hit number one for 1 week. And of course, Taylor Swift and Life of a Showgirl swept the entire Billboard Hot 100 and the official chart, only the top three, by the way. Elizabeth Taylor, Opaline, and Fate of Ophelia, which the Ophelia song, took me a minute, but I am caught on to it now, and I do like it. And listen, the album, I'm not necessarily overly amazed by it, but listen, for her, I can kind of tell, like, whatever is being left here in this album, it's like, okay, this is the last time you're going to get to hear from the Taylor Swift that has been single, that has been heartbroken, that has just gone through life on her own, basically, in love. Trying to be in love and out of love. Because after this, now she's not going to go back out on tour again. I would not imagine another Eras tour like coming up again for her. I think she's going to settle down and have a family with Travis Kelce. That's the plan. So have some kids. And maybe that's what we're going to see of her. And if we see her come back, whenever that is, she's not going to be the same Taylor Swift anymore. It will be a different feel to her. And who knows what that will be. But we'll find out what that'll be soon enough. Pop stars definitely change once they have kids. We know that. So what about music itself? Because there's been, in the industry of music and radio and various areas of media, there have been a lot of studies and a lot of op-eds going on right now that towards the end of the year, we start focusing on what needs to be tweaked or prepared for 2026. Media Research put out a blog post about the future of music streaming, that it needs to change or be changed. So I was listening to the On the Record podcast from Billboard, from Kristen Robinson hosts that show, and she was on with Matt Pincus, an investor in music. He was one of the originators of Songs and has done a lot of work in the area of being at a music label at a high-level executive position, now going to investments, doing catalogs, and now back in the music once again. And I thought the conversation was really cool because of the fact that where he's explaining how music is going right now, they're going by the way of how movies are being funded, right? You see now sometimes certain major movie studios are not flipping the bill for the entire product or project. They're using outside investors to go ahead and, add on to the project. So I think about the fact that I see so many different movies out there that, when you see the slates, it's like that Family Guy anecdote that they put out there about that you see like 9 million slates of different production companies before a movie even starts. Well, that's the same thing that's starting to be done right now for a music project, about how many different people are going to go ahead and invest in a project. And beforehand, it was the music catalogs and how much they were going to make off of that. And then they also talked about the fact of how much monetization now and how much cannibalizing, I call it, that the music industry does now, from ticket sales to merch to everything else, to monetize these artists. And, at the end of the day, they still talk about the fact that they think that music and major music labels are still trying to go ahead and do something where they are trying to support their artists to become the big star. But the thing is, they're still missing the part where there are other outlets that are supposed to go ahead and help support an artist to branch them out and make them big. Because there's only so much promotion, artist repertoire you can do right now for the music labels to go ahead and get someone to go and take off. It's very apparent they're struggling at that right now because there are not that many stars right now to focus on, because we're not getting artists in the habit of putting out albums every year or every 2 years. It's not happening right now. And if they do, then they're just in a different spot because it's either back catalog stuff they're going to do something with, or just more songs they already had. And they said, well, let's just go put another album and let's not do a Morgan Wallen type project with 37 songs. I mean, there's a difference of what you want to go and do. Plus, you have a lot of artists that, they have their songs and they have a lot of the people that are writing behind those songs, and they're all hoping those songs get published and get put out there and noticed, and people get to hear them and make the royalties off of them because they need the money, because there's not a lot of money for a lot of people right now in music. That's very clear. So Mark Mulligan here at Media Research explains that they produce a report series using today's change catalysts, mapping bold visions of what the future could and, more importantly, should look like. So the future of music streaming. And they go on and start talking about the cause for change, or the case for change. With streaming economics now mature and stabilized, rights holders and DSPs, the Spotify's, Apple Music of the world, has shifted to cruise control. External investment is flooded into rights, attracted by stable economics and growth potential. Financialization and optimization have become the defining market forces. More importantly, consumers are enjoying the most powerful and convenient music proposition that has ever existed. But it's the nature of the business that just when you think you have finally figured things out, the ground starts to shift once again. Social video, so the TikToks and the Instagrams of the world, are competing with music streaming time among 16 and 19-year-olds. It is winning. 10% of consumers would cancel the streaming subscription if prices would continue to rise. So yeah, if Spotify jacks themselves up to $30 a month, I think some people are not going to stick with it. Because the younger audience, they're not used to consuming music up to $30 a month like we used to in the record stores. Because remember, for the older audience, all this plethora of music we are subjected to, whether it's old or new, and we're not spending more than $23, $24 a month, when I easily can remember putting down for 3 CDs and going to Specs or Peaches or whatever record store I had and putting down money on that. Or even if it was older music, say greatest hit CDs and things like that, and I could put down $20 on a pack of CDs that I will listen to in the car or at home. New generations are not connecting music artists to their identities in the same way millennials and older generations did. Yeah, there was a lot that you get to know about the identity of people. When I think about some of the artists that, have come out recently with albums, Chappell Roan, how much do we really know about her? How much has been really put out in the ether about her? Same thing with Sabrina Carpenter, unless you follow along with her work as a child actress all the way up to now. I don't know anything about Olivia Dean, honestly. I mean, but her music's out there and I love it. I know nothing about the K-pop Demon Hunters artists with Huntrix. I don't know nothing about them. I know nothing about Blackpink, or really know anything about Cat's Eye. I don't know anything about Alex Warren or Somber. Like we don't get to go and feature those stories, but we used to have MTV and radio that used to help out with that. We don't have that. And we don't have any other places where we're going for that. I mean, I guess, we want to go to the random Billboard article or Rolling Stone if they do that, I guess. I don't know, but there's just not much of that. Like, how much of there is really to promote new artists? Because if I ever get to hear anything about new artists, it's over at BBC Radio or other countries when they do radio over there. But I just don't hear much of it. It doesn't happen. And we don't see a lot of performances live of these artists either to really get to know them either. 67% of independent labels believe it is harder now to build artists' careers due to the growing volume of songs. And I feel bad for some of the folks that are on TikTok that are trying to be aspiring artists. What's amazing is because of the fact that I follow along with so many artists that are out there, there's one thing where when I get to appreciate somebody out there that has some music that's really catching fire and I have an interest in, I want to go ahead and follow along with the ride. And I want to support that artist. Maybe not so much as a fan, but, at least stream their music. I think about when it was like 3-4 years ago when Tate McRae was still getting herself, into the era that she is today. And now she's the big pop star that she is. But think about the fact that I would watch some of the videos of her and some of the songs she would put out that didn't really hit that well. But now any song she puts out is going to do some kind of a dent. Angie's another artist, and she's Turkish, and she does a lot of dance music. But like her stuff is very much kind of in the same lane as, say, as Charlie XCX, like you would say, but like also just with an attitude that's just really cool. And I've been listening to her music for several years. A lot of that happened, around 2020, 2021, because we had a lot of artists that just came from the woodwork of TikTok in that particular generation. I think of Benet, and she had the song Super Lonely, right? And now she has a song called Cinnamon that sounds really cool, and I've heard it in commercials, but nothing else really out of that. I think about Tones and I when she came out. Like, there's just all these artists that we would hear about, and all of a sudden come to the front. And there's always these other artists that are not going to be that big a deal, but I'll notice them. I think of when I followed Stella Cole, or Tori Holub, or Trinity Lake, or Anaya, and all these other artists that are out there of different styles of music and everything else. And, you get a little bit of taste of who they are, a little bit of identity. There's only so much you can see in only a couple of seconds on a TikTok video, but that's one of the things we have. They also say that here in this research that the rise of generative AI is bringing concerns over volume to a fever pitch with 60 million active users of Gen AI music apps in 2024. I didn't realize it was that big already. That's a fifth of the U.S. right there, almost a fifth. But they're trying to be proactive. And that's one of the things that I always want to go ahead and subscribe to. When I do this program, I'm always talking about this kind of stuff. Being the critic that I am, being the journalist that I am, following along with all things media, and saying to myself, I just want certain media to realize the writings on the wall. Radio, I've been doing that for 5 years. Actually, 7 years now. Going to be 8. And they talk about the fact of why do they want to be proactive here and fix a problem that does not yet exist. It's because they say that waiting until it is a problem will be too late. But even in the interview I heard on the record from Billboard, they talk about the fact that the music labels are starting to make changes, but have been a little bit late to the game. So when they change some of the roles or getting rid of some of the roles they had of what they were servicing when it came to less radio, more streaming. Less marketing, more artist repertoire. Those are changes we were talking about on this program 2 years ago, but it's obviously happening. It was optimization instead of innovation that set the recorded music business up for a fall in the late 90s. When CDs were the dominant format, the post-boom growth was pursued via price increases rather than innovation. Sound familiar? Yeah, because by the end of the 90s, we were paying $16, $18 for new music. And we were able to do that. And by the way, at the end of the 90s, we're also talking about the boy band movie, about Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, and all these artists coming in, and everybody just buying up music. And the record stores were busy. So they talk about the catalysts for change. The evolution of music formats has progressively flattened the music listening experience. So collapsing content, seeing in convenience consistently trumps entertainment. So they talk about how the streaming apps have been showing us the way, not only putting friction ahead of convenience, but productizing it. Because the Chinese streamers, the TikToks of the world, they lean in and do things to get the most out of their experience. There's clear effort/reward equation underpinning this. And record labels' growing focus on fandom is led down by streaming because fandom did not catch the streaming bus in the West. Yeah, that's why K-pop is so popular, because they get a fandom already built up, and an army built up so quickly. So that even when BTS is not even a thing anymore, but while BTS is not out there as a group together, you got Jungkook, Jimin, or Suga, or Jin. They can all put out music individually, and that BTS army, while those artists are separate, are going to swarm in. When Blackpink put out individual music with Lisa or Jennie or Rosé, individually, that army would also just go ahead and push out. They don't have that kind of fandom here. The only one we have that actually has it like that is probably Taylor Swift. That's why she could put out 92 million streams of a song. The Fear of Ophelia getting 92 million streams in the US, I believe it is, in like 1 week. And that's why the entire album hit the top 12 slots on Billboard. I'm actually kind of surprised the Life of a Showgirl, Sabrina Carpenter and Taylor Swift song only got up to number 8. I figured it would have been a little bit higher, but that's just my taste. What can I say? More of the conventional single, I thought, but I guess not. Some of the highlights they have in the report that they had was, while the streaming market may appear healthy on a macro level, shifts in consumer behavior, especially among younger generations, will disrupt this trajectory before long, right? They're not going to stick with the streaming format of this. Because I'll tell you what, a lot of younger people I know, they will just go to YouTube and watch the videos themselves instead of going in listening to the music on a streaming platform that they have to go and pay for. Or they'll find somewhere else they can find the music for free. And I understand why. 70% of music streamers listen in passive ways, so in the background or multitasking. I do that. Growing formats like social video retain more attention, 42% engaging passively. And they go on to say that between the second quarter of 2023 and the second quarter of 2025, time spent listening, TSL, right? It would be time spent listening in the radio business, but this is time spent streaming, grew by 17% among 16 to 19-year-olds to 11 hours weekly. I just heard something about the fact that I listened on my Spotify to 7,600 minutes of music in the last month, the month of October. That's wild, but I do. On top of the fact that I also have one of these little Google Nest devices in the bedroom, and I'll have music playing as I go to bed to keep going with that. So what can I say? Now, that's a research report they had that you have to go and pay for, but either which way, I thought some of the things they put out there were quite fascinating. In the same realm, we have iHeartMedia that also has put out their own study when it comes to radio, and some of the similar ideas about what music and radio need to go and do together. Now, in this particular study they're talking about here, it's about consumers being digitally fatigued and craving human connection. So I want to take that headline right there for a moment and just explain the fact that, as I have said over and over, so MTV was necessary for music, and radio is necessary for music, because you have a chance to identify and get the identity and get the personality, the multiple dimensions of a person, and get to know who they are outside of the veneer, outside of the visual that you see, whether it's on social media or magazines, digital, or you still hold them. I mean, not everybody can go ahead and follow along with somebody on tour and pay, hundreds of dollars to go see them in live in concert. Some of the things are kind of tough. You don't have easy access to these artists anymore. Not like you necessarily had to before, but like, at least you would have certain places where people get to go and hear about them. And that's what's really fascinating is that, as I say, if I want to catch particular interviews, don't get me wrong. I know there are radio stations that do interviews here. Okay. I know that Kiss FM, if somebody comes into town, they're going to talk to them, but it's the kind of interviews they do. It's like, let's talk about your craft, talk about your music, talk about your inspirations. I don't care about that. Let's know about who these people are. BBC Radio, they'll do games with them. They'll do like certain little things about who is it that you like and who is it that you are interested in. And like, what are the things that you do when you're not on the road and you're not in the studio or you're not writing songs? Those kind of things we never hear about anybody anymore. And if you do, you gotta like really work around for it. Like, for instance, maybe, okay, there was a recent story I just saw about Olivia Rodrigo. She's supposed to be putting out a third album. And like, if you want to go and find more about her, okay, you can see certain particular videos out there, artists talking to artists. And that's something that, like say Variety or Billboard and all these others will do to put out something that will be interesting to the audience. But it has to be something quirky or cute, whatever. And it's like, you just can't have like a sit down interview and just get to know somebody. And it's not like you're going to get those interviews on any late night show or any talk shows. Remember, we don't have a lot of talk shows doing that. And there's not a lot of podcasters able to get top-notch musicians to come and sit down and talk. That doesn't happen much either. We haven't gotten to that point yet. Some do, okay? We do have Zach Sang. We have Zach Lowe, right? Or, excuse me, Zane Lowe. There we go. We get some of those, but we're not getting new artists that are out there hot right at the moment. I mean, it's nice to go and hear about Halsey and the fact that she struggled with her record label to get new music out, and her concept album only sold so much, but at least it was respectable. But because they wanted to put out pop music, she can't do anything else. It's also a matter of, I guess, that the music labels are too close to the vest in trying to keep control of their artists and not let them do anything which is going to put foot in mouth and screw things up for them. I don't know. It's just things like that. So anyway, iHeartMedia had their annual consumer study, AudioCon 3.0, the human consumer is called. Now, this was conducted in conjunction with Critical Mass Media. Over 2,000 adults in August 2025 being asked across different demographics, interacting with technology, social media, AI, and live content. 82% of respondents are concerned about AI's impact, societal impact. 90% say it's important to know that the media they consume is created by real people. They want meaningful human connections, but phones and digital devices often hinder those interactions. They go on to say here that consumers are emotionally driven, digitally fatigued, and yearning for authenticity in an increasingly algorithmic world, according to President of Insights for iHeartMedia, Lainey Furtick. For marketers, it's creating both hurdles and unique opportunities to connect with audiences in this new environment. So, yeah, there's so much out there digitally. And I will say, I can understand the fatigue because of the fact that you want to find something that you like, but then you have to go through a lot to finally get something that you will like. And sometimes what you do like, you're not going to get enough of because it's so easy to consume. And that's what's very tough. Because for us, we were always consumed with different things we would have that were going to be scheduled and we would know to go and have all day. Like if you're stuck at home, yeah, we might not have had phones or social media or anything like that to go and work with, but you know what? We had TV. They occupy our entire day. I think of the fact that if I wanted to go and watch TV when I was sick growing up, we had morning cartoons. We'd have game shows late morning into the afternoon, soap operas in the afternoon or something, or talk shows, whatever there was. And then we get to the news when the news was good, local news. And then primetime TV, whether it was cable or it was network or whatever. And then we would just kind of move along to late night and we would have things to go ahead and entertain us across a plethora of different channels throughout the day. And that would be nice. It'll be pretty easy. With digital media, we can't really rely on the fact that all the content we're going to go and consume is going to be good quality. It's going to be good all the time because we're talking about people that are influencers or content creators that might not be consistently good all the time. Even me, I'll have a dud of a show. And also the fact that I don't placate to an audience where I have to just keep feeding the same kind of content over and over. I don't want to do that either. It's just not my thing. It's still the fact that because also for the content creators, they want to be doing content that they enjoy. Unlike if they're doing something else, where they're working for a production company or a network or whatever, and there are certain subjects that have to go ahead and cover because that's what the audience expects. And there's a good thing about that. They say consumers are online but unhappy. There's distrust in digital media and digital fatigue driving interest in simpler devices. Very interesting. 42% of adults wish for a dumb phone. And the interest in flip phones has surged up 15,000% year over year. High-income households are particularly eager for breaks from smartphones. 97% of Americans know what AI is. 70% use it. 3/4 do not want AI involved in media entertainment. 2/3 fear job loss to AI, with Gen Z and lower income consumers most concerned. Now, Bob Pittman is quoted in this particular study saying that in a world of digital saturation and AI acceleration, consumers are not just looking for convenience, they're searching for meaning. Sports, radio, live media, human-led storytelling offer us rare sanctuary of trust, empathy, and shared experience. We must continue listening to humans more closely than ever and focus on ways to foster real connection and amplify our collective humanity. So I was talking to my friend Lou Pate on the phone, and I'm not going to, divulge anything personal, but I was talking about the fact that, there's a reason why people really enjoy sports and why live sports in that component are always something that people can get around and really be engaged in, because it's a human connection for the fact that, okay, if I'm watching football, I'm watching the Buccaneers. I'm going to go watch them play the Detroit Lions against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday Night Football. I'm going to a sports bar to go watch with friends, fellow Buccaneer fans, and we have a great old time, talk about everything and anything, and then we go along and chant and rip and roar on the game. And it's one of those things that we also talk about the game before and after, and the team before and after. NBA's coming up next week, and I watch the games with my brother and my father. And, when we're watching games, we can talk about that all day long. Just go ahead and just, mention things we see about either the game that we're watching in particular of what team that my father enjoys, which is the Boston Celtics, or other teams that are out there. Follow what LeBron and the Lakers are doing, or what Luka Doncic, right? Or what other teams are out there, and just follow along. And right now we're also coming up to the World Series. A lot of things happening in sports, and that really gets people together. You used to be with radio. Okay, listen to the radio, and other people listen to the same content as you. Like, how often do you have, besides the fact you have certain things that you are sharing with somebody, how often do you have like a large audience around you watching the exact same thing that you're watching and can follow along? So like an event, like an award show. Case in point, the Victoria's Secret fashion show. That went on yesterday, and everybody's talking about that, right? Madison Beer looking amazing, singing Bittersweet, or seeing Angel Reese out there for the WNBA fans, and seeing that, she doesn't look bad on the stuff, and, and the Angel's wings and all that stuff. That was like really cool, seeing all that once again. It's very fascinating that we want people to get together and have human connection. I realize it's not fun watching all the stuff we're watching on digital if the quality's not that good, if the content's not consistent, and you have nobody else to go and share it with. You have to wait to share with somebody, and then you have to wait for them to go and comment back. And by that time, you're probably not interested anymore, right? Also, more research and studies out there from Edison Research talking about the influencers among us. Now, they make the point here that the influencer industry right now is worth approximately $250 billion, expected to reach $500 billion by 2027. Wow, that's crazy. Creators like Mr. Beast, Charlie D'Amelio, Alex Earl, Ms. Rachel have millions of followers, as well as lucrative brand and merchandising deals. Yeah, they're entrepreneurs now. They're not even creators anymore. They're not influencers anymore. They're something more. They're celebrities. And they're sold out. They're sellouts to the business, but of course, why, who wouldn't do that, right? As of May 2025, they say that Americans 13 and up, 18% of them, say they're currently involved with the creation or production of any original content that's shared publicly online. I'm one of them. Close to 1/5 of Americans are spending their time creating and sharing content online for others to view, like, and share. And it changes when you look at different age segments. Under 1/3, 30% of Americans 13 to 24, say they're digital content creators. 18 to 34 is a common slip up because that's what radio always follows along with, right? A third of the younger audience out there, teens to 20s, are digital content creators. Similar percentage from 25 to 44, 28%. Millennials and Zoomers / Gen Z have grown up with the internet. It's no surprise that digital content creation is highest among those age segments. For Americans 45 and up, 7% of that group are digital creators. And where are most of these creators being found for the most part? YouTube. Because that's the other part that where I was doing with as well, is that YouTube is really taking over against television. We talked about how it was taking over more television consumption than ever before. That actually happened last year. And now it's just more domination as we go. So Hollywood Reporter spoke with Neil Mohan, the CEO of YouTube. And they talked prior to the San Francisco 49ers Arizona Cardinals game that ran on YouTube. YouTube has generated more than $36 billion in advertising revenue in 2024, and annual revenue, including subscriptions like YouTube Premium and YouTube Music, tops $50 billion, with revenue shared among the more than 3 million creators in the partner program. I wish I was one of those, but I still can't get there yet. They go on to say here that many of the genres that once defined cable TV have migrated to YouTube. Chefs explaining recipes in the kitchen, used to be Food Network, have moved there. Content creators like Dude Perfect and Mark Rober are creating shows that would have been right at home at Disney, Discovery Channel, or Nickelodeon. But now, what genres will take over next, and how quickly will it do so? From talk shows to scripted dramas, and yes, to live sports, there are signs that the platform's ambitions will collide with the traditional TV business sooner rather than later. It's just a matter of who's going to be able to get out there, over there for that. Late night TV is already in trouble. We already know about that. We talked about that a few weeks ago. Talked about the podcasts that are blowing up right now on YouTube. And then talk about the flattening of the format. Big stars can leverage their fame to become major YouTube creators, and creators can leverage the platform to become big stars themselves. Nielsen Research has been tracking the streaming platforms that consumers watch on their TV screens ever since it launched what it calls The Gauge in 2021. And the last year, YouTube's domination of The Gauge has unnerved executives at some competitors. YouTube is the by far watched video platform, 13.1% share. Netflix in second place at 8.7%. They go on to also talk about the fact of the difference between traditional Hollywood and what they're doing on YouTube. Unlike with Netflix or HBO, YouTube creators are taking on the risk for their projects. If Netflix likes a concept, it picks it up, providing the budget and resources to help it get over the finish line. YouTube, it's up to the creator to finance and produce their content, while the platform regularly releases new tools to help them. Scripted entertainment is particularly tricky, requiring writers, directors, sets, costumes, lighting, direct editing, special effects, and other production requirements that may go beyond the typical creator-led show. Some of the biggest creators have turned to major studios and streamers to help them do the projects they want to do. Others have turned to private equity, with several private equity-backed firms promising 6- and 7-figure investments to subsidize production of shows that will live on YouTube in exchange for partial ownership of the show in question. But creator-driven scripted content may be rising at the right time for Hollywood, in the middle of a historic pullback in the genre after years of explosive growth. Scott Purdy, who's U.S. media industry leader at KPMG, says that more traditional studios and platforms will ultimately pursue deals with scripted creators, though may take time for some to emerge. They also go on to say here in this article that perhaps the most significant things that need to happen for scripted content to break out, multiple sources across the creator ecosystem say, is for ad dollars to migrate from prestige TV towards scripted creators, and for the user experience to match. Yeah, they don't have the sponsors for it. They got to get that somewhere somehow. This is a super long article, but we're just going to leave that there and just make the point of where they say things are. Now, a few of the stories I want to bring up here before we wrap things up for this program. Spotify is now partnered with Sony and Universal and Warner Music, the major music labels, to develop AI music products. They're also partnering with licensing giant Merlin to develop responsible AI products to empower artists and songwriters. Now, they don't say what specific products there are out there, but they have plans to build a generative AI research lab and product team to develop technologies that reflect this mission. And their areas of focus are partnering with labels, distributors, and publishing companies to develop products for artists and fans through upfront agreements, offer artists and rights holders the ability to opt in to use generative music tools, build products to create new music revenue streams, and create a stronger artist-fan connection with AI tools. Again, back to human connection. If you can make it with AI, I don't know if that works, but hey, the algorithms, they think they can do that with anything, right? The Ringer podcast network and their 16 podcasts will now be shown on Netflix. Thought I'd make the point of that. So Bill Sims, The Ringer, right? Good for them. So yes, a video podcast partnership with Spotify, with The Ringer's top shows. That's including the Bill Simmons podcast, the rewatchables, and conspiracy theories, among others that are going to be in this deal. This weekend, I'm going to the Regal Theater to go watch After the Hunt with Julia Roberts. Want to see how well that movie turns out, if I really enjoy it. And I forget the Io Edibiri, right? Is that, she's from The Bear? I forget. I not forget that she's from The Bear. I just don't remember if that's her name. That's the correct pronunciation. So if I butchered it, I did. Anyway, come back next week for another Broadcasters Podcast. Remember, the content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.